This is episode 51 of Integrative Answers to Cancer with Dr. Will Cole, another repeat guest of the show, but a very timely one. If you listened to last week's episode with my son Ryder's original naturopathic oncologist and foremost in the country, Dr. Paul Anderson, after we'd seen a bit of unexpected growth on Ryder's last MRI, he was talking about some of the success he's had with a ketogenic style diet in combination with some other metabolic therapies. But he also mentioned that most people who promote the ketogenic diet do it stupidly, in his words, meaning people should be talking about a whole lot more about plants and less about animals. And another previous guest of the show, Dr. Will Cole, who was on back in episode 40 to talk about functional medicine in cancer, has a new book out on a plant-based ketogenic diet, so I figured it'd be good timing to get him back on and pick his brain on that. And as you know, we've had some pretty strong opinions both ways on ketosis from guests of this show, and one of the primary complaints, again, was just that so much animal product consumption is promoted, which Dr. Cole is obviously addressing with his book, but I also wanted, as long as we were at it, to get to as many other criticisms or complaints I've heard along the way, along the lines of a ketogenic diet just being flat out unnatural, plants or no plants, and as it pertains to cancer in particular, the lack of available data on long-term survivors. And I really liked his answers. I hope you get something out of them as well. By now, hopefully you know about us that we try not to completely close ourselves off from new information or not go too deep down any one particular rabbit hole, and always keep the big picture in mind and ask how new information fits into it. And I think this interview does a very good job of that. On a personal note, if you were one of the many people that are with us on the Stern Method on Facebook or Instagram that had such incredible kind words and well wishes on our recent wildfire scare, thank you for that. It really meant a lot. If you don't know what I'm talking about, maybe you should go like the Stern Method on Instagram or Facebook so you can catch the next crazy thing that seems to happen in our life every couple of weeks. But this latest one was we came very close to having the very newly built non-toxic house we've spent over the last 3 years trying to get off the ground become no more when a huge wildfire started in the canyon we live in and started growing very rapidly and heading our way. We got out of there and were holed up for the next several hours just staring at computers, trying to get updates and all that. And eventually the incredible firefighters and emergency responders that were involved were able to bring it under control. So we're very grateful to all of them. And the experience was just a nice reminder, if anything, for us, though, on what really matters. 4 years ago, we were inpatient in a children's oncology ward after our then 1-year-old son had just been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, not knowing what literally the next minute would bring and just wishing for any scenario but that one. But even then, it wasn't hard to notice other scenarios that were, objectively worse, and us feeling bad for those parents and those kids. And I guess what I'm trying to say is no matter what's going on, if you're still standing or sitting, listening to this podcast, looking for answers, it means life is going on, and now's the time to be grateful for your family and everything you have. And before we get to the interview, I will mention, speaking of gratitude and new homes, that we are very grateful for our Sunlighten infrared sauna and really looking forward to setting it up in the new house. And that aside from it having the most safety data we could find on the product itself, between EMFs and the wood use and binders and all the rest of it, and the efficacy of it actually raising core body temperature, that thing has also endured several home moves already and countless spills and little kid roughhousing in there, and is still going strong. And as it is an investment, you want to know it's going to last, and I really can't think of any better testimony than that. And of course, when you mention us, either the Stern Method or Integrative Answers to Cancer, you also get a couple $100 off to make that a little easier investment to make. All right, quick note on this interview itself, as we did just move to the middle of the woods with no internet cable or phone line or anything like that, with very spotty cell data service. We are still looking for the best way to actually conduct these interviews going forward. This one was in a sound booth of the Park City Library, which is awesome that they have a sound booth in there, but unfortunately the connection still wasn't the best. We did a pretty good job of cleaning it up and all that being said, but just pardon the dust, so to speak, on the next few episodes until we get the best situation squared away. I'm recording this outside the new house right now, and if you're watching this on YouTube, this camera clearly wasn't even meant for outside light, so a few things to figure it out, but we will get it figured out. And with that, let us hear about this plant-based ketogenic diet with Dr. Will Cole. Welcome back to Integrative Answers to Cancer. We have with us Dr. Will Cole. Will, how are you? And thanks for coming back on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Quite well. Quite well.
Good. Good.
Yeah, I was just telling you this is going to be a pretty good follow-up to the to our last episode, and you probably don't know this, but this whole journey for me has been started from my son getting diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. We brought that back. He's everyone was pretty well convinced in remission, and we still think remission is the operating term. But his last MRI, he's got a remaining mass in his spine. His last MRI showed a little bit of growth, and we got another couple tests done, and the operating theory is that it's mature cells, not immature active cancer cells. It would be more mature benign cells, that sort of thing. But that being said, I'm kind of diving back into what exactly is the best thing for him, and we're taking a hard look at everything, just genetics, metabolic function, gut, detoxification, just kind of the basics and that sort of thing. But I had on Dr. Paul Anderson, who you may or may not be familiar with. He was actually Ryder's original naturopathic oncologist, and was just picking his brain on everything. And he seemed to think that a metabolic approach, ketosis, that sort of thing, wouldn't have much of an effect on a mature, slow-growing tumor like that. But he also, because I asked him, like I was just telling you before we started recording, I hear both sides of people for ketosis and cancer, people against ketosis and cancer, and he's a very big proponent of ketosis and cancer when it works, which is for his purposes most of the time, but he thought that this purpose wouldn't do much good. I'd be interested to hear if you had a different take, but he made the comment that you don't have to do keto stupidly, I believe is how he said it. And what he was referring to there was a lot of people, most people, promoting a ketogenic diet, whether it be for cancer or for the other purposes you would do a ketogenic diet for. There's a lot of animal recommended, not a whole lot of plants. You have a new book out that's basically advocating for the opposite of that, a whole lot of plants and not a whole lot of animal. That was a very long-winded introduction, but do you want to just expound on that for a minute?
Yeah. So I am a functional medicine practitioner. Obviously, you know this for anybody that's listening that doesn't know. So I'm immersed in patients most of my week. Most of my patients are in other states and countries. So I primarily am interested in and spending my time on what works, what doesn't in patients' lives. So my new book, Ketotarian, it's a plant-based ketogenic book, was really born out of at this point, over a decade's worth of clinical experience. And one of the main sort of tenets of functional medicine is that we're all different, but to use this as a foundation and from there personalize it was my goal of Ketotarian. So it is a plant-based keto food plan, as I mentioned. Half of it is science and health tips and research, and other half of it is recipes and meal plans and pretty pictures and like how to do it. There's vegan keto, there's vegetarian keto, and pescetarian keto, or wild caught fish, and what I call vegetarian, still primarily plant-based, but wild caught fish and shellfish and things like that. Now, some person could do entirely plant-based and vegan keto, or they can bring the vegetarian and pescatarian options if they wish, based on personal preference or health reasons or a number of reasons why. And some days you may be one or more of the other. It doesn't really have to be one or the other. So another reason why I wrote this is because I am on a ketogenic podcast, and I get people asking me questions about this is going wrong and I'm going keto, or all these other these problems that people are having just by eating a ketogenic diet. And I see a lot of common pitfalls that I'm like, I need to put this in a book to just summarize it. And I think that people are coming in with great intentions. They're eating anything as long as it's high fat, low carb, and they see the benefits of it because that is short-term better than the standard American diet. They're lowering insulin, they're lowering inflammation in the short term. They're getting the blood sugars down, and they're able to lose weight. They typically have more energy, and there's a lot of these short-term metabolic benefits. Long-term, they're eating a lot of meat and dairy, and they're becoming over concerned with macronutrients, I think over quality of food. And it leads many people to unintentionally avoid vegetables, non-starchy vegetables even, and starchy vegetables in fear of their carb content and throwing out of ketosis. So the goal for them is anything that throws me out of ketosis is a bad thing, and vegetables will throw me out of ketosis. And I think those two are two unintentional mistakes that people make. And I show the research in Ketotarian that the fiber in the plant food, the soluble fiber as well as the insoluble fiber, is actually beneficial at lowering blood sugar, and it's good for the gut microbiome, which focusing on non-starchy vegetables like green leafy vegetables and Brussels sprouts and onions and broccoli and all those good plant foods out there, not necessarily potatoes all day long, but there's a lot of plant foods that you can eat, sort of this amalgamation of the best of being plant-based and the best of being keto to fuse them together so you get the detoxification, phytonutrient aspects of being plant-based while still getting the benefits of not getting your fuel from sugar alone. And you burning ketones, which is, again, it has its many health benefits out there.
So what foods are you straight up giving up, like that do not work on this diet? Is there like a class that you stay away from, or is it just kind of individual, this food and that food, or what's like a kind of a rule of thumb there? Or I'm sure you get into the book, but.
Yeah, so the base of this sort of Ketotarian triangle, this pyramid, is green leafy vegetables, non-starchy vegetables, and fats, healthy fats. So that's going to be olives, olive oil, avocados, avocado oil, nuts and seeds, and if you're bringing in the vegetarian fats, pasture-raised eggs and ghee, clarified butter, and wild-caught fish would be omega fats would be there as well. And then from there, we're talking about clean protein and other vegetables. So you can have like fermented soy, like tempeh and natto, which are good from a probiotic standpoint, and they're organic and non-GMO. So for the vegan and keto eater, that would be one complete protein source that they can bring into their diet. And obviously wild-caught fish and eggs for other vegetarian and pescetarian ketogenic options. And then from there, smaller amounts of moving up that pyramid, we have low fructose fruits. So berries would be allowed in smaller amounts, but still allowed. And the citrus, lemons and limes and grapefruit are allowed as well. So that's kind of the bottom, the bigger part of the pyramid to the apex of this sort of plant-based keto approach.
Okay.
Anything else probably wouldn't be allowed. That's going to be grains and things like that. Not that you can't have them. So what I talk about in the book is to do it for 8 weeks, shift your body to being in nutritional ketosis, lowering inflammation, providing the brain fuel, providing mitochondrial fuel, all of that, becoming a fat burner. And then from there, to answer your question, maybe at the top of the conversation, is not everybody has to stay in ketosis all the time. So there's some people that feel great there, their labs improve, and their energy improves, their weights improves, and when they experiment going out of ketosis, they don't feel as well, and they see some of the issues coming back. Those people can stay in ketosis longer based on their specific case. And then some people are going to like moderating their carbs and then do sort of a cyclic ketogenic approach where 5 days they're in ketosis and then 2 days they moderate the carbs, and then but they have that metabolic flexibility that they built over those 8 weeks of being keto, but they can go ebb and flow in and out of that, which if people want to have more carbs, they feel better. Some people have more carb tolerance and they do better on more fruits and more starchy vegetables, and even more like grains, like gluten-free grains like rice and quinoa and corn and things like that. They do better with that, or they do fine with it, and then they can ebb and flow, but depending on how they feel or what they want. I want that metabolic flexibility to create a grace and lightness to the foods that they eat, and they don't have to stick to the same thing every day if they have that metabolic flexibility. Some people don't have that metabolic flexibility. They'll have improved that over the 8 weeks, but people with insulin resistance, people with autoimmune issues, people with other health problems, with seizure issues, epilepsy issues, cancer issues, they may not have that flexibility in 8 weeks. So they are going to maybe want to stay there a little bit longer. But I think moderating your carbs, increasing your carbs for a lot of people can work tremendously, but that metabolic foundation is still that plant-based keto approach or low carb approach. And then some people do it seasonally, where they'll increase their fruits and things in the summer, and then in the winter they'll go more ketogenic. So there's a lot of personalizations after the 8 weeks of being plant-based keto that I talk about in the book, so they can make it their own. I don't think it's one size fits all. Everybody has to be keto forever and ever. If you're failing at your health if you don't do that. That's the opposite of the message that I talk about.
Yeah, and that's, when I look at, because I'm always trying to figure out what's natural, it seems like a pretty good yardstick to follow. And obviously, I won't say obviously, but it seems that being in ketosis 24/7, 365, that, you wouldn't find that in nature. But, when you look at seasonal eating, I would think that you would be, you'd have access to more fruits and that sort of thing in the summer, and not as much in the winter. And that, that would make some sense. Now, I don't know. And just when I think in general of, all the foods available, if you consider, and then I guess you can get into, not, not, people say not all foods are meant for humans, but I mean, that aside, it seems like there are more carbs available than fats. Do you agree with that statement?
Yeah, I would say that is the American way. I think that we like carbs, and we like fats and carbs together too. So like bad fats and carbs. We love our, potato chips, and they have like the canola oils and the fats in there. They're fried. We like deep fried things that are carby and fatty together. It's like the perfect storm of the taste buds, and it's an addictive thing. And then add sugar on top of the grains. It makes it even better for people. So yeah, it is definitely more common. But if you look at the amount of sugar that we consume, comparing that to even just 100 years ago, let alone the 10,000 years or so of when our genetics have been unchanged, our diet has changed very dramatically over a very short period of time when you're talking about the totality of human existence. So that mismatch between our world, our environment, our the foods that we eat, the actual environment, our soil, food supply, that mismatch is really at the heart of a lot of researchers and clinicians that are looking at why, in part, there's a reason for chronic health problems that we see today. So eating more primarily or in alignment with our DNA would be more of a lower carb diet. Now, some societies would be more meat-based, but it'd still be lower carb. But not everybody does well with lots of meat, especially on our body. They're not digesting it well. It's not good quality meat that people are eating. So that's why I wanted to recalibrate sort of both worlds, recalibrating the plant-based world, which is depending a lot on carbs, albeit real food carbs, but it's still carbohydrates. And many people don't do well with those. And then recalibrating the keto world, which is depending a lot on dairy and meat, and bringing them a bit to the center and saying, okay, look, that you both are onto something, but you're kind of taking it to the extremes. I think this is more of a moderate approach to both ways of eating.
And when we say ancestral, what if you live in, more the middle hemisphere or the southern hemisphere? And I'm just talking off the top of my head, but I mean, wouldn't you have more access to, fruits and higher carb plants? I mean, I'm just talking about, walking around in nature, not necessarily, what you have at the supermarket or whatever. But I guess that's one thing I've been thinking about lately is, when you say ancestral, it's like, well, whose ancestor, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
would that kind of vary based on geography, or how do you?
Yeah, based
How do
on
you think?
geography, and it'd be based on geography, and then today it would be based on their genetics and our microbiome's genetics, both of which get passed on from generation to generation. So it would. I think the goal here is to be as in alignment as much as you can, as like you said, as natural as you can be. And I think that again, the average person eating the average diet, seasonally increasing their carbs when fruit would be plentiful for most people, their heritage, where they would be in alignment with their DNA, that would be a natural thing. And then there'd be times where fruit wouldn't be plentiful even in the summertime, and they'd go in random bouts of fasting, which is another way to get in ketosis. A lot of people are talking about the benefits of intermittent fasting and fasting. And I mean, you get in ketosis when you fast. I mean, that's what one of the main benefits of doing fasting is doing. So that is another tool that we talk about in the book, how to fast and to do that. And you can do that seasonally. So even if you're not in ketosis during the summertime all the time, if you choose to do sort of a seasonal approach, you can still fast in the summertime, and you'll have times of ketosis during the summertime. So that's that. Again, going back to that metabolic flexibility that I want people to experiment with to varying degrees.
Good. So when you talk about fasting, so do you advocate for mixing in fasting with ketosis in the book, I take it? Or, obviously with nutritional ketosis, I should say.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a tool. It's a tool to increase ketosis, to increase autophagy or cellular repair. Ketosis is a way to increase autophagy and cellular repair. So they're one and the same, really. And becoming a fat burner, you are hungry less. So you tend to skip meals and fast randomly just because you're not hungry. So they're one and the same. The more fat adapted somebody is, the more likely they are to intermittent fast, actually. And they may not even be consciously thinking, I'm going to intermittent fast, but they just are randomly not hungry because their body's more efficiently functioning, metabolically speaking. So they're separate in the sense of someone can use it to get into ketosis, but it's also a byproduct of someone being fat adapted.
So I think I just caught you saying, if I heard the sentence correctly. So some of my anti-ketosis friends that we've had on the show like to say that ketosis is like fasting without the benefits. And I think the main thing they're talking about there is autophagy. You mentioned autophagy in connection with fasting, but did you say being in ketosis, like in nutritional ketosis, while you're taking in calories? Are you talking about autophagy in that state as well?
Yeah. So being in ketosis and eating a ketogenic diet from real foods mimics the benefits of fasting. It's a sort of a fasting mimicking approach for people. And that's why it's so sustainable for many people, because your appetite's curbed, you're eating food, obviously, and then on top of that, burning ketones will further curb appetite. So yes, ketosis will increase autophagy, and not just autophagy, but AMPK pathways, like the anti-cancer pathways. It increases NRF2 pathways, which is, again, this anti-inflammatory pathway. So there's a lot of anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, anti-cancer pathways, namely the AMPK and the NRF2, that are a result of being in ketosis, which, again, fasting puts you in ketosis as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that leads me to another complaint I hear about a lot. So when we talk about ketosis and cancer, a lot of really compelling research out there, a lot of pathways that you want to be on, a lot of pathways that you don't want to be on, those are getting turned on in the right direction and that sort of thing. But just in terms of the amount, like the actual long-term survivors you hear about, it seems like, and maybe it just hasn't been documented as well, but it seems like when you watch, an alternative cancer documentary, or you hear an interview on, somebody interviewing somebody that beat cancer naturally, that sort of thing. Like, Chris Wark has interviewed, I don't know, probably hundreds of cancer survivors. And obviously he has a plant-based Gerson style preference. So that's the sort of people he interviews. But I'm saying if you look for interviews of people who beat cancer naturally, you're going to find a lot more of the, I juiced a bunch of carrots and went all fruits and vegetables and that sort of thing, versus I did a ketogenic diet and did metabolic therapies and I'm alive, say 10 years later. Because I'm hearing a lot of stuff about, people that, did really well on it, that, that are alive a couple of years later. And I'm interested to, hear from those people in a few years. But I don't know, is that, do you hear from more long-term survivors? I'm just trying to think of like how long it's even kind of been around. Because that's another complaint that I hear is, lack of long-term survivors.
Yeah, well, I think that it is. There's a certain aspect of it being newer to the health blogosphere and the social media aspects of it. I mean, I grew up in the natural health world since we're talking about the 80s. And like that was very much like the world I grew up in was plant-based and fruits and vegetables and whole grains and all of that stuff. And I'm not talking negatively about that at all. If something's working for somebody, then go ahead and do it. And we're all different in that way. And I would say many people, even then, and even people that are still in that really higher carb, plant-based world, still advocate fasting. Very much so. So those times of fasting, again, their body is going to be in ketosis.
Yeah.
So they're being ketogenic. They don't even know it. So there's that. But I see amazing, exciting, emerging stuff coming out of the keto world. So I think time will show more and more this, but there's exciting research of showing what ketones can do for some cancers. If it's glycolytic, it's not for all cancers. It's not a cancer cure for everybody. But there's exciting research for certain tumors, namely brain cancer. But we're going to learn so much more over the next decade of how this can be beneficial. But this is a lifestyle application. And again, I think it's good to experiment with things, see your own personal experience, and be your own variable, be your own N=1, your own real life as a lab, and see what works for you. Because the science is exciting, but it's still emerging. So I think common sense and personal experimentation while using real food and common sense stuff like we're talking about is something worth trying.
Could you, and yeah, I mean, I totally agree. There's, if something isn't working, I'm not going to stick to it just because, I have some prejudice against something else. Yeah. I'm going to try whatever I need to try until I find what works. That being said, could you go into more on, which cancers you've seen, even just which are like the most glycolytic versus, which might not be so glycolytic and that sort of thing. I was just listening to your co-host Jimmy Moore's, I think his second most recent episode. He was interviewing a guy with glioblastoma that that was his main strategy was ketosis, in addition to conventional therapies and such. But conventional therapies don't do that hot against glioblastoma. So the fact that he's here a couple years later, that's certainly saying something. So yeah, I've heard a lot about it for brain tumors and that sort of thing. But what else, stands out in your mind in terms of, a kind of a low hanging fruit for a ketogenic approach?
Yeah, for cancer specifically, at this point, the research points to certain brain cancers and certain stomach cancers. So that's the sort of the main research that's out there. But again, I've seen anecdotally just getting questions in from people on the podcast or people mentioning or talking to me on social media about their own personal stories. It's not documented in the medical literature, but I think a lot of anecdotal people having beneficial results with their oncologist and positive reports and studies as far as their personal ketogenic lifestyle.
Yeah, that's good. That's kind of what I've been hearing, and it's just I'm always trying to scrounge as much information as I can because I hear a lot about brain tumors and neurological tumors, I should say more. more broadly.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, I'm hearing bits and pieces of other types of cancers as well. So I'm always just trying to see what people have heard and what people
Yeah.
know. Um, that being said, yeah, I don't know how much you work with people going through cancer in combination with ketosis, but the one thing that I was actually just leaving off on that interview before I got out of the car and set up shop here in this sound booth in the library. I'm really glad this library has a sound booth. Like I was telling you, we just moved just moved out in the middle of the woods, so we're making do on the road. But yeah, that's the guy was just starting to get into how much better he felt once he got into ketosis when he was on chemotherapy, versus before he found ketosis. Is that, have you worked with patients reporting similar things?
Yeah. You're saying the feeling better once they're in
Yeah,
ketosis?
they kind of mitigating a lot of the side effects from conventional therapy.
Yeah. So I mean, for people that are maybe listening and not really knowing what we're talking about fully, your body has two different forms of fuel: it's sugar or fat. And most of us just living in the West are in this sugar burning mode. So ketosis is burning fat for fuel, and it's shifting your body into nutritional ketosis, which is a natural state that your body has to provide fuel, an alternative fuel source where your body will take its own fat and dietary fat, and the liver will break it down and produce ketones or ketone bodies. And beta hydroxybutyrate is the main ketone that's been shown to have a lot of cool health benefits. One of it's passing through the blood-brain barrier, so it's good from a brain fuel standpoint. It's been shown to decrease brain inflammation, and it's sort of a clean fuel there. It can pass through the cell membrane and provide mitochondrial, so cellular energy as well. So it's a metabolic fuel, cellular and brain fuel, but it's also an epigenetic modulator, which is at that point, it balances out certain pathways in the body that are, one's exciting for me is regulating inflammation in the body. So it sort of balances out these inflammatory cascades in the body, which is beneficial. Most of my patients are on this sort of autoimmune inflammation spectrum. That's what excites me about that. And the brain benefits too. But what motivates a lot of people is the weight loss and the fact that, and obviously a lot of research showing it improves insulin sensitivity, which we know is not good for many types of cancers, is higher insulin levels and lowering blood sugar levels. These are all good outcomes for people in nutritional ketosis.
And I was at, maybe you didn't hear, maybe I didn't hear the answer to the question. I was talking specifically about side effects from chemotherapy and radiation and that sort of thing.
Oh, okay, yeah. I'm sorry.
That wasn't a good answer because I'm glad you backed it up and kind of clarified there.
Yeah.
Because we kind of jumped into the conversation. But yeah, no, I was saying the interview I was just listening to, the guy was talking about how much better he felt. He was in the middle of chemotherapy. He found ketosis. He found the ketogenic diet maybe, 3/4 of the way through his therapy. And then, for that last quarter, once he got onto a ketogenic diet, he said he felt a whole lot better and was able to go to the gym and all that sort of thing. So I was asking,
Yeah. So people that are going through chemo or any other sort of treatment that can be really taxing on the body, absolutely. I've heard the rebound response being improved. So if it's their second round of a treatment, they're rebounding better than their first, and they credit that to their change of their diet.
And do you have, and I've heard this quite often, but I haven't really dug into, do you know why that is? People like, what's the biological mechanism going on that's making them feel better on, such a taxing thing such as chemotherapy?
Well, I think it's what comes to mind for me, and it's probably more far-reaching than just this, but I would say two top of what comes to my mind. First would be the brain benefits, the impact that you're getting such clean brain fuel. So if you're getting that fatigue and being taxed post chemo or any treatment, having that extra clean fuel is one benefit, and the impact that it's having on lowering inflammation levels. So if I had to use an analogy, it'd be like a more like if efficiently fueled hybrid vehicle, someone in ketosis versus more of the sugar burner, which will get by, but it's kind of clunky, it's more inefficient, and you have to refuel often, and they can be inflammatory when people are depending on all the sugar for fuel. So I think it's just more of a clean, efficient way to fuel your body. So if you're going through any sort of stressful thing, your body tends to operate better at getting that easy energy.
Yeah, and that's that's what I picked up on when your first answer was inflammation, and maybe it is as simple as chemo's obviously highly inflammatory, and it's doing a lot to tamp down the inflammation. I don't know. Another thing that
I think that's a big possibility. I don't know per se. I don't think there's enough studies to show the benefits of that specific to chemo, but the research that has been done, it makes sense why that would be advantageous for someone going through that.
Yeah. No, it's like you were saying, it's certainly still emerging, and I'm interested to see what comes of it now that it is kind of in the mainstream and there's more people talking about it. And I'm sure there's going to be more, now more people are trying it for cancer and having good results. I'm interested to see what happens 5-10 years from now, that sort of thing. If there will be the same number of people that did as well on a variety of cancers as, people, however people have gotten through in the past. It's all interesting stuff. But yeah, I'm always curious to figure out why something's working. Like I said, I certainly heard a lot of good things about ketosis and chemo side effect mitigation, but that just came to me that I haven't really nobody's really talked about why that is. But does it matter if it's working?
Yeah.
That's obviously the big thing. So the book is, you said it's kind of half science and explanation of the benefits of ketosis, and then you said there's a lot of different meal plans and that sort of thing for all the different types of whether it's vegetarian or pescetarian or somewhere in between, that sort of thing. It's like kind of half and half.
Yeah, so half of it is the science of ketosis, the science of autoimmune inflammation and inflammation at large, and the connection between inflammation and cancer and heart disease and diabetes and autoimmune conditions and all of that. So kind of setting up the why we want to be doing this, and sort of the ethos of it, the heart of framing why we're doing this. So it's not just another diet to add to your diet pile, but it's actually meant to really use food as medicine and really loving your body enough to nourish it with good food medicine. And I think that awareness of why people are doing something for their life is so much more powerful versus just saying, well, this is a diet, and most diets fail. And I think that this is not even meant to be a diet. It's meant to be a lifestyle change, and just educating people on that and showing them the research, and then showing them the pitfalls and the benefits of ketosis, and then the pitfalls and benefits of being plant-based. And then how can we learn about the benefits without falling prey to the pitfalls? And then that kind of leads into the recipes. There's over 80 different recipes. Again, vegan keto, vegetarian keto, and pescetarian keto. And then, there's a 4-week meal plan and pictures and things so you can see what it looks like.
And I haven't dug into, all things keto, but just you mentioning pitfalls. I hear about like the keto flu and people just feeling crappy in general on switching over to ketosis. And I know, is that more people not doing it right, so to speak, or is that more a consequence of they haven't been metabolically flexible, being able to switch back and forth for all this time, and now they're trying to do it, there's going to be some discomfort? Or is it a little bit of both? Or what's kind of your take there?
So it's a bit of both. So some people are doing it unintentionally wrong, and that we can help solve those simple problems with simple solutions. And sometimes, and a lot of times, it is that metabolic shift that's happening. So we're not talking this happens to everybody, nor is it extreme for everybody. It really, most of the time, it isn't. But there's some detoxification going on. If your body's becoming more, I should say increased detoxification or increased detoxification pathways going on there, because your body is burning fat. So there's lipolysis going on. Your body's releasing fat. A lot of toxins and xenobiotics and environmental things are stored in the fat. So that's then released. Your microbiome is shifting. So people that have candida overgrowth or bacterial overgrowth, that is shifting in the microbiome. And carbs and sugar can be addicting too. So not having those, there's sort of multiple different layers to what could be happening by not getting that sugar fix that people are so oftentimes addicted to varying degrees. So there's a shift going on. And then there's ways to mitigate that, to ease it. And then from there, people are burning ketones. It's going into their brain. It's going to their mitochondria. It's going and being dampening down inflammation levels. So when they make the metabolic shift, they are that more efficiently fueled human being.
I know what else I wanted to ask you. So I hear this meme. Meme's probably the wrong word, but people saying that ketosis is a survival mechanism, not a, and I guess it's because it's fasting mimicking. So really, you're mimicking a fast, which if you're in a fast, then in essence, you're surviving. But that, it's a survival mechanism, and maybe it's only supposed to be during a fast, and you're not really, supposed to be in nutritional ketosis. And I'm probably butchering that, that complaint, but I'm just trying to, we get, there's a lot of talk, a lot of different.
There's opinions for everything. Look, Look, I
address as many as
I hear it all. Yeah, so I could write about grass being green, and I'd get people debating me about that. So something's not as concrete about grass being green here. There's definitely is not that obvious for people, but totally, I hear what you're saying, and I think that there is, and I think that's where the personalization comes in. It's that if someone is going through insulin resistance, okay, they're severely insulin resistant, they have PCOS, or they have type 2 diabetes, or they have metabolic syndrome, or they have these inflammatory problems, and they experiment with going in ketosis. And then they try going out of ketosis, and they get a flare. Their blood sugar spikes back up, and it was so normal. They were like, the doctor was able to decrease all their medications or eliminate their medications during their time of ketosis. And then they increased their carbs, and they flared up, and they had to go back on the medication. So is ketosis wrong for them? No, for that person, they were seeing the benefits. Their doctor was seeing the benefits of being in ketosis. That doesn't apply for everybody. So inflammatory problems, insulin resistance, hormonal problems tend to do better with longer times of ketosis and then days of moderating their carbs. So there's going to be times when they're going to be out of ketosis just naturally. I actually don't really know anybody that is actually in ketosis all the time. There are people that are in ketosis a lot of the time, but I don't know anybody that's in ketosis all the time. But for myself, I don't have to be in ketosis all the time, but I have the metabolic flexibility where I can go in and out of it. Like I'm fasting right now. I'm doing this 5-day sort of plant-based Ketotarian fasting protocol that I wrote about in the book for the next 3 days. I feel great, but I know when I'm done, I'll be out of ketosis, and I'm fine. I have that metabolic flexibility to do that. That's kind of the goal. It's not to be like ketosis forever again, or you're gonna, feed bad things for your health if you do that.
Yeah, and that's certainly, where I kind of push back on some of my very adamantly anti-keto friends. Is I can certainly go 24 hours without eating, and then I'll have like an apple and a banana, and then I can go another 24 hours. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's, I think it is just, it is a matter of how well is your body able to shift back and forth based on the available fuel. Yeah. Okay. Is there, I don't know, is there anything else that you were hoping to say, in particular in regards to ketosis and cancer and, how your book would kind of fit into somebody going through cancer, looking to, optimize their diet, that sort of thing, before we get out of here?
Yeah, I think anybody that is eating predominantly plant-based, they're going to love this because it's just different options for them to experiment with. It's still plant-based, and it's not an abandonment of what they're doing. It's just sort of a biohacking tweaking of what they're currently doing. If anybody's experimenting with ketosis, I think the same thing. They're going to give you a lot of different, more plant-based keto options for you to bring into your ketogenic lifestyle. And then there's all of us in between that don't know what the heck to do, or is eating the standard Western diet. And it's a home for them as well to use food as medicine, and then do 8 weeks of being plant-based keto. And then from there, experiment, moderating their carbs, see how they feel, increasing the carbs even more, seeing how they feel, or doing it seasonally, or just cyclic throughout the week of doing 4 to 5 days on ketosis and then 2 to 3 days off. I think that all of that stuff is home for most of us. And I think that this is just a tool for people to sort of take their health to the next level and experiment with.
Yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to checking out the meal plans and doing some N=1 experimentation. That's
Love
it. All that said, the name of the book is Ketotarian, and when does it come out?
Comes out August 28th. So
very soon.
Yeah, very soon. And it's on pre-order now, depending on when this airs. You may be watching this afterwards, so it's on sale on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and all of that stuff.
We are on a very, very extreme shortage of episodes in the bank, so this will be out well before then.
Right, so it's actually on you for pre-order. If anyone's watching this beforehand or listening to this beforehand, if you go to drwillcole.com, you can get free recipes and a preview of the book now. So as soon as they're listening to it, they can go to drwillcole.com and get that.
Very good. Dr. Will Cole, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
There you go. I hope you got something good out of this. As always, given that there are such strong feelings on both sides of ketosis, especially in the cancer space, that also sort of quickly morph into vegan versus carnivore arguments, I'd love to hear what you thought about this. Please let me know in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube, or in the comments of this article in the show notes on our website, which for this article will be thesternmethod.com/Will Cole Ketotarian, with dashes between Will Cole Ketotarian. If you are listening pertaining to a cancer diagnosis for yourself or a loved one, do take note of Dr. Cole's comments on the most research and testimony sort of hovering around brain cancer and not so much on the other types. So if you are dealing with something besides brain cancer, I would certainly bear that in mind, although Dr. Anderson did mention a paper he's putting out on a variety of cancer types last episode, so I am looking forward to seeing that. Until then, we'll keep plugging away, trying to get as many different views on as many topics pertaining to reversing cancer as we can, and also we'll be starting to feature more real-life consultations with various experts in our own journey healing our sons, so stay tuned for those. I think it's going to be a really different and neat type of learning experience for all of us. And as always, music was provided by the Fat Rat and Tasty Network, and all production was done by my wife and best friend, Teddy Sternagel. This is Ryan Sternagel reminding you that if you are going through cancer, to just keep going. That's all for now. God bless and Godspeed.